Zilzal, I can hear it because if there's when you're making kiddush now, there's no zilzal. If that's the thing that I'm making the kiddush on, and that's you want to say it's that's the takana, I can hear that. But that's I don't think that's what we were saying.
Where are we holding? Where's everybody discussing?
We're still on the same point. We were first discussing, oh no, what happened to Rebbe? And then I think Rebbe was in the middle of talking about something about ha'etz, was answering Joey. I was wondering if like I can hear a little bit, if it's okay with everyone if I talk. I guess I am. But on the side of Zilzal, which is not what Rebbe was saying. Rebbe was saying that the first shita in the which is I think the Rif is like it's a new Suda and therefore we need new Hamotzi. But if the Svar of Zilzal would apply there, I can hear the difference between whether the thing that we're using for Kiddush, if it's only a Zilzal if it's not being used for Kiddush. So if I'm making Hagafen, so the reason that it's not a hefsek is because it's not a Zilzal to have the wine. I don't have to make a bracha. It's not so there's no isser on the wine that I'm drinking already because I'm in Kiddush on it. Masha ein kein the hamotzi, there was a zilzal, maybe that would be a hefsek. And then the other side would be that, and if I'm eating hamotzi as the Kiddush, so then it's also not a zilzal in that. But I think Rebbe was saying that that's not the side of the Hakira that Rebbe was plugging into the Rif.
Yeah. We're saying that the Taz is maintaining that even according to the Rif, if you are making Kiddush on pas, then that's not a problem. Then that no longer creates a siluk. In other words, that type of a Kiddush you're making on pas can no longer be a siluk and a gemar for Achilas pas because by definition you're being mater through pas. So it can't be. It's I want to say it's pasnish. It's pasnish to be.
I caught it.
Well, Rebbe hears it even in that the Hakir. The Rebbe hears the difference between the first halacha. I think that's what.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was asking. I think that's what we were. But I'm asking, maybe the whole machloket is within the tzad of it being an isser because it's zilzal. Meaning even the first stam. Also, no pun intended. The first ashita also would be within zilzal, because then I think I can hear that misvara that there's a difference in what you use for kiddush.
Right, but then how do you explain the machlokas whether you need a motzi? If you what's your shot in the machlokas? That if you do make kiddush on yain, what's the nukudas on machlokas whether you make a motzi or not?
You would need to make hamotzi because that zilzal is a hefsek. I mean that I'm not explaining
then the bottom has a good time that it's really a side issue. It's not an issue inside the etzim suda.
Right.
Side issue. So that's what we're coming to address.
Unless it's not a side issue, that's
by definition it is. If it's only zilzal and kiddush, then that's certainly not something that's integral to the suda. It's not a hefsek and etzim suda. At least for pashtus, it's not. It doesn't seem to be. Well, there might be another possibility which we'll come back to. So so that's how we're holding it this till now. That seems to be a very good shot in the machlokas, and that's what the Taz is learning. Now it's very good. I really originally thought I had a steer to this, but I think it actually works out well. Is that that really the Balamor and the Rif seem to be l'shitasam. Later on in the parak, and we saw the Marmakam was to look at the Rif and Kuf test, which is Chavdal and Amar Aleph in the Dapia Rif in the regular, I don't know which Gemaras we have, but it's Chavdal and Amar Aleph in the traditional Gemaras. That the Shaila of the Rif over there, the Rif over this is going on, what Ravina says that to address the shaila of why drinking 4 kosses is okay, there's a side problem of zugos, to do things in pairs for whatever reason that's considered a sakana. So I asked, what about the kosses? It's 2 pairs, so watch sakana. And Ravina says that kol echad ve'echad mitzvah b'fnei atzmahu. The answer is that each one is l'chudakoi. Each kos, it's not you have 2 and 2 or pairs of 2. You have each one is a separate entity. totally on its own. It's a mitzvah of Fniatzma. Therefore, you don't have the Indian of Zugos of pairs. So the Rif goes on to say, B'Shem his Rabbeim, that since that's the case, to the extent that each one is a mitzvah of Fniatzma, then each one needs a separate Brei Pri Hagafen on each coast. And which seems to be a svara b'fnei atzma, the Rif saying that itself, the fact that each one is a separate mitzvah, that's good enough reason why each one should be toned its own coast. Even though in other words, the Rif is addressing the Kuda here, even though you know very good and well that when you make the first Brei Pri Hagafen, you're going to drink a second coast as well before you're going to get to benching or anything like that. You're going to have another coast coming. Even so, the fact that each one is a mitzvah b'fnei atzma seems to be a good enough reason why you should make separate brachos on each one. And we don't say there's no hesach hadas, so we have to understand how that works. But then the Rif goes on to bring a raya to that from the Sugi and Chulin, which goes on to say that the Gemara over there, the machlokas, whether you have to make, if you, the Mishnah says if you shecht 100 chayas in one place, you need kisui echad the kulan, 100 ophos, kisui echad the kulan. And Rehuda says that shachat chaya yichasa v'chakach yishchot ha'of. You should do the kisui adam for the chaya before you shecht an oaf. Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Yehuda's model in bracha, she'ein mevarach el bracha achas. You only make one bracha. So Amalei Ravina the Ravacha Breder Rava, Amalei Ravacha Breder Rava Ravashi, Maishna Brona, and Talmidei de Rav. They were sitting in a suda, and Rabbi Yeba Saba was serving them, and they said, Havam v'nivrich, let's bench. Bring us a coast, let's bench. And then they said, no, let's drink more. So Rabbi Yeba said, Rav said, in the name of Rav, that came down Risu, Havam v'nivrich, itzadachol nemishti, chamra. Once you said, let's bench, he said, you can no longer drink wine, which means you can't drink until you make a new bracha. So the Gemara's maskana is that the difference is the betzim, it sounds like they're the same, except for the fact that there's a technical difference that you cannot bench and drink at the same time. It's EFshar. There's a svara of EFshar. Mashen ken shchita and kisui adam, it is efshar. You could possibly, if you're really good at it, you could shech with one hand, do kisui adam with the other hand. I don't know if I trust his shchita, but okay. So now, the Tosas over there brought down B'Shem Rabbeinu Yom Tov that because of this svara of EFshar, therefore, if a person will go to daven, then also if you go daven in the middle, then you should have to make a new bracha because it's EFshar to daven and to drink or eat at the same time. So that should be mechayev a new bracha. Tosas, however, asks on them on Rabbeinu Yom Tov that can't be. He brings a raya connected that from the din of mixas chaverim, and they go out to daven. They left some people back. When they come back, they don't need a new bracha. So it's before Gemara, not like that. And also the svara from the sugi itself. So you see, not like the Rabbeinu Yom Tov. The Rabbeinu Yom Tov obviously learned the sugya that he's just tofes the muskanas sugya that everything's totally in one thing only, whether it's efshar or efshar. So whatever is efshar, then that's mechayev a new bracha. If you have to do something, and such as davening, since it's efshar, then that's the fila muskana. That's all you need. But Tosas is learning that we're missing it. You're missing it in integral part of the sugya. The sugya started off discussing something which is a silak v'gamar from what you were doing before, such as hanlav manivrich. Let's bench is not just it's a silak v'gamar from the original shtia or the original achila. Benching is by definition a gamar of the achila. And then the Gemara asked the kasha from kisui because the Gemara understands that kisui adam is also a gemar of the Maisa Shchita. You're supposed to shecht and do kisui. Kisui is megala that you're done with the Shchita, now mechaset. So that's a siluk from the Shchita. So then we have a steer between two types of siluk. On that we answered, okay, efshar v'efshar. It's only considered a siluk gamor true, it's a Maisa but it's only a Siluk Gomer to create a Hesach Hadas when you have a combination of two things. You have a Maisa and it's EF Shar to do that Maisa while you're doing the Maisa Harishon. So you need a combination of those two svaras. That's what Tosa says, and the Balamor as well over here says the svara that that Shchita is a Maisa Siluk. So,
Kisui?
Yes. Sorry.
Kisui is a Maisa Siluk or the Shchita?
The Kisui is a Siluk from the Shchita. Okay, so you see that you always need two ingredients. You need, as the Taz says, you need tartibin, and you need two. You need a combination of these two. A Maisa Gemar Siluk, and you need a Maisa. The fact that it's Iyashar, you can't do Iyashar L'Kaim Shneim at the same time. Now the Rif over here, to understand what the Rif is saying by Dalet Kosos. So the Rif, the fact that he says you make a new Preper Guffin. So the Balamor asks over there, the Balamor also asks that why would you need a Preper Guffin? Where do you have true? It might be impossible to do the two at the Badi Adadi, but just like Tefillah, we know that it's not considered a hefsek, even though it's Iyashar, because it's not a Maisa Gemar V'Siluk. So the Balamor says the only reason the Gemara has to kasha to begin with from Kisui Adam to Havam Benibrich is because the Gemara held that they're both considered a Maisa Siluk, and that's why it's a kasha to begin with. Masha'enken Dalakosas, there is no Siluk. By saying Halav Haggadah, true, you have to say Halav Haggadah, but that's no different than having to daven. That's like Tefillah. There's no inherent Siluk in the Dalakos and from the Shtiyas Dalakosas, from the saying Halav Haggadah, Haraya, the Gemara says that if you're Shosa Bena Kosas, you're allowed to drink more between the Kosas. So there is no Isser to drink while you're during the time of the Haggadah. That's what the Balamor maintains. And therefore, so the Balamor says, very fascinating, he says that the Rif is actually Lishitaso, because the Rif seems to hold, he seems to learn the Rif like Rabbeinu Yom Tov. And so therefore, you don't really need a Siluk, according to the Rif. It's enough just to have Efshar. So he says the Rif is Lishitaso. The Rif says in the beginning of the parak, by Paras Mapa Makadesh, but also over there, the Balamor said there's no really Isser, not an Isser. There's no Isser Be'etzim on the Suda. And even so, since it's Yevshar, the Rif held you have to make a new Motzi over there. So just like the Motzi over there, the Rif also over here holds Preper Guffin. But he says, I already slugged that up over there and showed that you don't need to make a Motzi because of the Kivi Hadar. There was no Siluk from the actual Achila. And therefore, the Kivi Hadar, so you don't need a new Motzi. Huadin, you don't need a Preper Guffin over here by the second and fourth coast. You're only going to need it on the first and the third coast that you have benching in the middle. That's the way the Balamor asks on the Rif and is cholik on the Rif in both places. He holds that we're all the Shutasenu. But
can Rebbe explain the Rif, just the Raya? So Rebbe's saying that the Rif holds like, the Balamor is saying that the Rif holds like Rabbeinu Yom Tov, because I had a hard time understanding what his Raya was from the Gemara. He's saying that Rabbeinu Yom Tov's sheet is that just that that it has to be Efshar.
Right. Now, so
how does that work with the Dalet Kosos? Is like, what's the Efshar there?
Oh, so that's even, but the Efshar is just the fact that you can't actually say the Haggadah while you're drinking. Not inside Isra, but inside Efshar. It's impossible. You can't.
Why don't you have to make another? Why are you allowed to drink then? In between.
Oh, so that's one good kasha. This is why would you be allowed to drink at all and not make a new bracha? And the Ramban over here, the Machamas over here says Chas Shalom. You could just drink in the middle of the Haggadah. That they said you're allowed to drink Bena Kosas means after the first kos until you start the Haggadah you could drink. But of course you can't drink in the middle of the Haggadah any more than you can drink in the middle of Hallel or in the middle of Birchas Asher Ga'al Lanu. You can't drink in the middle of those things. There's for sure asar to do that.
Rebbe?
Yes.
Well, according to I understand the Efshar concept here, but like once we say that Ravina says that Kol Echad Be'echad is a mitzvah b'fnei atzmohu, why is like starting the second cup not itself intrinsically a gemar of the first mitzvah? If each one is its own mitzvah, then why is that not like if I'm starting a new mitzvah? So just like we said, kisoy hadam, were it not for the fact that it was possible, it was afshar to do both at the same time. We said kisoy hadam is like its own thing, and therefore that would have been a gemara of the shechita. So why here is this not also like once I do the second cup, it's clear that I have done a siluk from the first cup.
Oh, excellent. So I think that's really the emistic of shot in the Rif, not like the Balamor. And that's what in some ways the Ramban seems to, so going back to the Mahalach of the Taz at least, the what we said before. So for Karet, the Rif never meant to say like a Beni Yom Tov. And like we said before, that the Rif for Karet, the Rif holds that you have two ingredients backed by Poros Mapa and Mekadesh. We had both ingredients. You had the fact that it's Iyashar to eat while you're making Kiddush, and we had on top of that we had that the until you make Kiddush, there's an Isser on the Etzem Suda, which is Machalik it up into two separate Sudas. So you had, just like over there, you had the combination of the two. Also over here, like you just said very well, that over here you also have a combination of the two. You have the fact that the Sfora of Kol Echad Mitzvah B'fnei Atzma, the way the Ramban says it, is that creates a type of a nimlach. It creates a nimlach. So what is the Sfora of nimlach? So similar that you just said, where Shlomo Zalman writes this in a tshuva, but I saw that the Taz actually says this over there in Tafayin Dalet in Biblos Pesach, in this din of Dalikosos. The Taz says, Starka Lashon. Yeah. Where are we? The Shulchan Aruch passes straight like the Balamor, which is very interesting. He says, you could ask maybe a steer in the Shulchan Aruch, because there in Hilchos Shabbos he goes like the Rif, and here he goes like the Balamor. So just thought of that now and didn't cop that. But Shulchan Aruch says, Shosa kos sheni ve'in mevarach alav. Lo bracha rishona v'lo bracha arvana. You don't make a bracha on the second coast. That's the minhag of Sfardim. She'en mevarachim brei pri agafen ki'im al kos shel kiddush al kos shel berach samazon. So that's the Shulchan Aruch, and the Ramah says a minhag ben Ashkenazim levarach bracha rishona al kol kos v'kos. Al bracha achrona in mevarachim. Okay, that's a separate shayla, bracha achrona. But so it's this machlokas, the Rif and the Balamor is machlokas Machaber and Ramah in Tafayin Dalet in Biblos Pesach. And there the Taz says, nearly Tama Gaonim. The reason that you don't make the Shulchan Aruch holds you don't make a bracha is because there's no hefsek over here. There's nothing that was really considered a hefsek. So he says beautifully, he says, Tama Gaonim, that you do make a bracha, Navade lo havi hefsek. Okay, Anachanami, there's no real hefsek because there was no Maisa Siluk. A few hachi, Sarak Brei Pi Agafen L'Kol Echad, came into Chachamim Tiknu Dalet Kosos, since Chazal were Misakin to have Dalet Kosos, 4 separate Kosos, which that's Lashon Kol Echad Mitzvah B'fnei Atzma. Have Kamasne Beferish B'Shas Bracha, She'en B'Daito Lishtos Machmas Bracha Zu, Ella Kos Zeh. Came in Shitzarach Kos Acher, Chayav L'Baruch Alav, Ken Nirali. It's if there's a Tanai, Chazal Misakin a Tanai in your Kavana, that the bracha Brei Pi Agafen only goes up until the next coast. Because once the next coast comes in, since the Adkama that's a chiyuv, that should be a coast b'fnei atzma, so then it's like you had a das only to that point. It was similar to what those that were there, we learned Hilchos Sukkah, and according to Rebbeinu Tam, that you make a bracha only on the achila of the Suda, only on a motzi, you make a birchas leisha of Sukkah. So then even if you're, according to the Taz over there, even if you stay in the Sukkah the whole time, you never left, you made and you benched, and now an hour later you get another Suda with the new motzi, you need a new birchas Sukkah. Because the Taz held that it's kilo they were masnid, that the kavanas habracha of leisha Sukkah only goes up to the next emotzi. So the Achronim, most Achronim Cholok over there, but here we have a stronger sword than that. The Kuliyam over here, the Chazal Masakin, Dalet Kosos Nifradim, and therefore there's like a Tanai, and Shlomo Zalman in the Tshuva speaks this out as well, that there's a Tanai in your das, that the das of the bracha only goes up to the next coast, which will answer why, if you drink more, you don't need to make another bracha until you get to the next coast, because the chiyuv, the tanai is only when you get to the next coast, and the bracha up went to that point, and ad kan up until the next coast. But until that point, the Brei Piragafen before the Berch Sanenin Shabo, the Brei Piragafen will go. It'll take you to the next coast. So if you would drink in the middle of the Haggadah, you would not have to make another bracha according to this for. Yes.
And the Balam or Shita is that unless there's an actual siluk, there's not going to be any requirement for new bracha.
Right, and that's why he holds you don't make a new bracha on the second coast.
But he holds that the fact that it's a separate mitzvah is not intrinsically a siluk.
Right.
It has to be ma'isa siluk. There has to be
Right.
some kind of an action.
Right. So he would hold that it's like if you shecht a bunch of animals one after the other, each one is a separate mitzvah. But even so, the fact that it's a separate mitzvah is not machayev a new bracha.
But if I would, let's say, go and put tefillin on in the middle of shechita, that's a different action in between. That would be an obvious siluk.
Wouldn't it be a siluk because there's nothing in it that's a siluk from shechita? It's just you happen to put on tefillin. If I would like they ask what the Ramban asked if you would hear thunder and you make a bracha on the thunder, so that also would not be. There's no siluk in that just came up. It's only if you do something, you do a kiss to Adam.
So it's not just an action. It has to be an action that's intrinsically showing that you're being misalik yourself from the meal or from the whatever the mitzvah is that you're engaged in.
Right. So that will be then that'll be the sfor of nimlach. Why is it nimlach? Like the Ramban says that according to the Rif, kol kos is a bracha b'natzma because it's like nimlach between the two. But by definition, nimlach means I didn't know. The shamish didn't know he was going to get another piece of bread. That's why I mixed in a bracha. Here I know I'm going to have another kos. So you have to say that it's like nimlach in that Chazal made a tanai that there's the sfor of the Taz will work together with Ramban that they created a matzah b'nimlach because it's like we find that the shamish didn't know. Here we made it like you don't know. We made it like your das only goes to ad kan and that's it until you get to the next one.
This when it comes to mitzvah, the mitzvah of arba koso, so each one is a mitzvah b'fnei atzma, where we're plugging in das into that. So if let's say we have, I don't know, somebody's am haaretz, or you have somebody who doesn't understand, the arba kosos, would that make a difference? Do you have to have das to be yotze the mitzvah, or how does that work? Because we're saying that it's kind of like das and the way that the Rabbanim were masaking the mitzvah arba kosos.
Well, the way the Taz adds in over here is that Chazal, together with Misakim Dalakosas, they're also made a Tanai in your das. It's kilu they gave you the das of the one kos is only up to the next. So when you come to do what Chazal said to do Dalakosas, and you have no idea what you're doing, but I'll do what the rabbi said. So then part and parcel with what they said is that your das of the first bracha only goes up to the second kos.
It's interesting that it works like that. Wow.
Yeah. So now if you're Sephardi, you have a different das. So, so you have.
It fits in with that comparison Kibbalah Rutatza of Beis Chamev.
Pardon?
It's mamish like it fits in with that Kibbalah Rutatza of Beis Chamev, that comparison, because it's mamish like a kiddushin. You kiddush Moshe v'Yisrael. That's why I'm drinking the koso.
Oh, that's what you meant. Okay.
I actually saw a pshat like that. That's the pshat in because there's 7 brachos, like Sheva brachos. I don't remember who said it, but it was like he counts like the Dalit Kosos and the Motzi Matzah. There was something like that actually.
It takes out Shechianu. Right? It's like
You're
7 brachos until the matzah. If you take out Shechianu, because Shechianu he says you can make later, and you still be yotze.
Uh-huh. Everyone's reminding me of the famous machlokas from Shimon Shkup and Chaim Brisker, that Shimon Shkup said a famous pshat in the Tosas Yevamos, difficult Tosas Yevamos. The Yisod came out from Shimon that Ma'aseh Kedushin is not something you do once and then you're done and it just stays static, but it's like the Bria, it's like Mischadish Korega Rega. So like the Nisun is Mischadish Korega Rega. It's like it's Mischadish constantly. So they say Chaim Brisker saw Shimon at a Simcha. And he went over to him, started her shot. So you get a mazel tov. Kims to a mazel tov. You just got married. You're getting married. Chaim didn't hold so much of that shot. Anyway, okay. So maybe not time to go into it so properly now, but the Muhammad's over here, and the way the Muhammad's is the third sheet of the way he explains the Rif is that you actually don't need a siluk at all. The Ravid by us as well. The Ravid by us, the way he learned, they interpret the sugya and Kulin, is that you don't actually need a Maisa Silik, you need a Maisa Hefsek. It's a different shot. It's a think about it for a minute. It's a fascinating thing. They say that the Ramban brings rayas that you don't actually have it. In order to be a hefsek, you don't have to have a silik. You just have to have a type of hefsek that's muchach mitoch the suda that it's going to come. That type of a thing is going to force you to have to make a new bracha. He wants to say that even the benching itself, true, benching happens to be a silik, but you don't even have to come onto that. Since the fact that when you make a motzi, that's machayev you at some point to bench. So that, and the benching is something that's iyashar to do while you're eating. So then it's not a siluk, but it's a hefsek. It's you don't have to come onto a siluk. It might be one, but you don't have to come onto that for benching. And so therefore, anything which is a hefsek, and you have a combination of the two sforas, like Tosa said, but the two sforas are a little different. Tosa said the two sforas are from the Gemara and Chulin. You need iyashar combined with siluk, with the Maisa Gemara of a siluk. But the Ramban says over here that it's not necessary to go that far. All you need is you need EF-shar, like the Gemara says, combined with something which is muchach to come mitoch the sugya. And therefore, with that he explains Kiddush, and he explains what's going on over here by halal the Haggadah. He says even if you accept what the Balamor says, there is no isser to drink during the Haggadah. Still, since you're muchach, we took the suda to have a Haggadah, and it's impossible to drink while you're saying the Haggadah. So then the combination of those two things is enough to make a hefsek, even though you don't have a real sidluk. That's why they're on Ramban learns. So I'll just throw out a Maramukam to look in if you have time, that it seems to come out to be a stira in the Ramban, according to this. Because the Ramban, the way he explains Rif over here by Dalakosos, is different than the Ramban by us. In our sugya of Parspapa and Makadosh, the way he explained Rif over there is because it became like two sudas. It's not just a hefsek, but it became like two sudas. So what the Ramban's trying to marviach is why you should make a new emotzi but not have to bench. Because if you accept the Balamor's taina that it becomes like two sudas, then why shouldn't you have to bench and make a new emotzi? It's only a hefsek, like a nimlach, then that's enough. Then you don't have. Then for a motzi, you don't have to bench. So hilchos hefsek is more kal than hefsek than hilchos akira of the gemara of the siluk. But the Ramban by us clearly said the words and the Rif that it's like two sudas. So the Ramban is learned by us, and our sugya is learning like the Taz, like the Sforah that we said, that it became an Isser in the Etzim Suda, and it became a Gemara of a Siluk, it's the Asr, the Suda itself. So I'm not sure how to reconcile the two Rambans, but that's maybe change.
Which are the two Rambans? One is the Melchamos on the Rif in Chavdalid,
right? And the one is the one by us and Koras Papa Mukadesh. The way he addressed the Balamor's time of the Balamor said the Kive Hadar. You go back to the same Kfiyas, and the Ramban says, no, it's not the same Kfiyas, it's like two Sudas, which we explained that why is it two Sudas? Because you had an Isser to eat that Suda until the Kiddush is a Matir on the Isser Achila, and now it's like a new Suda, and that's why you need a new Amotzi. It's not enough of an Akira to need to have to bench, because you're never Oker yourself in the Kfiyas, but Bal Korchach, you had enough of an Akira to have to make a new Amotzi, because it was an Isser Achila Be'etzim on the Suda. So to me, it seems like a stira and the Ramban. The Ravid by us, and the Hasagas Ravid on the Balamor learns like the Ramban and Chavdalid. There he says clearly that even without an Isser, as long as you have a combination of EF-shar and you have the Sforah that Bal Korcho, you have to stop. There's something that's mitoch hasuda, you have to do it. Mitoch the Suda, then that's enough to be a hefsek as well. So he learns like the Ramban and Chavdalid. But according to the way we learned with the Taz, then the riff is beautiful. The riff is l'shitaso, and it's beautiful, and it's each one is there's a raya from the Gemara in Chulin to the akira that we had over there to the akira of Dalakosis. You have a total hesed das. Your das only goes so far. Okay. Now just to say a few ha'aras l'halacha l'maisa before we end. Mishnah Brura, if you look at Sifkat Yud Aleph, by us in Reish Ayin Aleph, Sifkat Yud Aleph, so he only quotes the svara of the Isser's mitzad the Kiddush. He doesn't say anything about the Suda, so it's mashma more like the svara of the Balamor, but I add Sarachiyim because he's explaining the Shulchan Aruch that's paskening you need a new emotzi. So the lashon of Mishnah Brura to me it's just a ha'ara is Sarachiyim to me. Because again, if it's only a problem inside the Kiddush, then the Balamor's time should come back. You should not need a new emotzi. But the Mishnah Brura Mineo Bay is explaining the Shulchan Aruch that you do need another emotzi. So that was Sarachiyim. I don't have a shot in that. Just pointing out. Now, another point in the Mishnah Brura is he says that the Isser is chal on you already at Banish Mashas. Even though it's not the time to daven l'chatchila, the Gra holds l'chatchila when she daven by Tzeitzah Kochavim, even Friday night. So, but even so, Banish Mashas, the Mishnah Brura says, and the Shlomo Zalman asked this kasha, why should there be an Isser Banish Mashas? Why should there be an Isser of Achila already then? If that's not the time of Chatchila to daven, and therefore it's Chatchila not yet the time for Kiddush. So why is the Isra Achila already Chal before that? She says it's dochak to say that already from Plaga Mincha, since you could eat Suda Shabbos, if you go by when you could eat Suda Shabbos, then that's already an Isra Achila, that Kiddush, then really it should be also from Plaga Mincha. Because Mikra Din, you could already do it from then. So my Shna, Anishtana Benish Mashas from Plaga Mincha, that we know there's no Isra Achila, just want to just eat a snack from Plaga Mincha, we know there's no problem with that. So why should Benish Mashas be any different? So in his Hasafas, in Chela Gimel, Shlomo Zalman was answered that since the halacha changes, you could already yotze the Suda, if you eat the Suda Benish Mashas, it would be enough to eat a kazayas, even though it's not a Suda Kavua, it's not with less than a kabetza, not so Kavua, but since Shabbos came in already, we say the Gemara later on Kufay says Shabbos Kava Nafsha. Once you hit Benish Mashas, then it already gave it a chashivas of Onik Shabbos at that point. So therefore, once you're already Mekayim Onik Shabbos, then there should also that's why there's also Isra Achila before Kiddush at that point. So that's the Nakuda of Shlomo Zalman. Another Nakuda in the Mishnah Brura that he says that once you're Makabel Shabbos, even being Ba'od Yom, once you're Makabel Shabbos on yourself, then this Isser of eating before Kiddush is already Chal. So let's say you're in the middle of eating a Suda from Friday, and then everybody stops and they daven Kabbalah Shabbos. So at that point, even though it's still Ba'od Yom, it's after Plaga Mincha, everybody's Makabel Shabbos. At that point, it's usher to eat until you make Kiddush. The Isser is already Chal at that point. If you don't do that, if you don't daven, you weren't Makabel Shabbos, then it's Chalani Mamela at Benish Mashas. That's what the Mishnah is Machadash. So this creates a problem. Let's say a woman is not davening, so let's say she lights candles. That's her Kabbalah Shabbos. She lights candles, and then she's thirsty. Let's say, so Mikra did she can't drink anymore. Unless she makes Kiddush, she wants a drink of water. Then once you do the candles, then it's also for her to drink. So, but it's brought down the poskim that they say that Shasat Chak, that she's really, really thirsty and she's going to be weak, then we have to rely on that she could drink. Or unless she's thirsty already before lighting candles, she knows she wants to drink, but if she's afraid she starts drinking, she's going to break Shabbos. Like it's already the very last minute to light. She's busy with the kids to the very last minute. Now it's mamash the last minute to light, but she's so thirsty. So the poskim say as well that it's like we get her Shasat Chak that she could light candles all tonight to be able to still drink after the Halakas Neres. Just a couple of chidushim of the halacha. I saw Kishmaka Chiddush from B'Shem Rabbi Yoshev, that if you're Paras Maka, let's say you're eating Shal Shudas on Shabbos, and it's Shabbos that's leading into Yom Tov. Yom Tov is Motzi Shabbos. So you're having a long Shal Shudas and you keep on going into the night. So then Rabbi Yoshev holds that also for Yom Tov, there's a halacha of Paras Maka Mekadesh. So in order to continue eating Shal Shudas going into the night, then you have to be Paras Maka Mekadesh for Yom Tov, which then you have to do Yak Nahaz, you have to do a Havdalah for Shabbos and a Kiddush for Yom Tov, then you can keep on going. And then you'll have the same the Kiddush is, you don't have to bench. You'll go into Yom Tov. It'll be an interesting question. What do you put into the benching? Do you have to add Shabbos into benching or not? It'll be similar to the Shalah of Shabbos going into Rosh Chodesh. What do you mention there? Do you still mention Rosh Chodesh when it's already Motzei Shabbos, or so we're not going to go into that right now. But anyway, he says there is a din Paras Maka Mekadesh there as well. Okay, we already mentioned the Ramosha's Chiddush. It's in Chelik Orach Chaim Chelik Gimel Siman Mem Hey, that the fact that you don't need a new Brei Gafen over here when you Paras Maka Mekadesh, that shows us it's a gilui that the Brei Gafen by Kiddush is always Birchas Hanenin, not really Birchas Mitzvahs. So Ramosha says an interesting Chiddush. Let's say by accident, when you're making Kiddush, you make a Shahakol, and then you finish the Kiddush. So since Shahakol, you're Yotzei for Brei Gafen as well, B'di Yaved, so then you don't need to go back and make a new Brei Gafen and Yotzei Kiddush, because you're only missing the proper Birchas Hanenin, but there's no problem inside the Etzem Kiddush itself. And or let's say he says if you forgot to make Brei Gafen, you held the kos and you start making Kiddush and you forgot Brei Gafen, you just said the whole Kiddush. So now afterwards you have to make a Brei Gafen to drink the wine, but you're Yotzei Kiddush. You're not missing anything in Kiddush itself. It's Birchas Hanenin. And or like we said before, this is from Ben Zion Abashol in his Chuvas writes in the Oral Tzion that if somebody walked in and missed Brei Gafen and they just read Birchas Kiddush, then they're also Yotzei without here Brei Gafen. Okay, I think we'll end with that. Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good
sure.
Shabbos.
And next week there's
Thank you, Shabbos.
there's not going to be a shiur next week. It'll be at the Aguda convention, but tomorrow Makomos I'm going to be giving are really going to be we'll give today in Mr. Shemel's with Rabbi Ravinsky's request as I thought this for a long time myself. Maybe the only month is starting before Shabbos, but shkoch for the ha'ara, so we'll start giving Mar Makomos today, and it's a very big sugi coming up. So I think it'll take us 2 weeks to really learn it anyway. So we'll do the shiur the following week for the whole thing. Well, some Mar Makomos come out now. We'll have more Mar Makomos as we go along for the 2 weeks, and we'll try to cover it all the following this year.
So these coming 2
The
weeks.
new sugya?
Do sugya. Well, we have to finish off the Gemara to the end of the sugya. Really, it's related, and there's some Chiddushim. There's a lot of Rashbam to finish off, and then we'll get to the new sugya is going to be Kiddush Makom Suda. That's a massive sugya. It's a really incredible sugya, very lamaisa, there's a lot of aspects to it. The first aspect of it is going to be just understanding what's the chi of Kiddush Makom Suda, and then there's going to be the second chelik of the sugya will be what's considered a makom or not, the same makom, or what's the shinu makom regarding that. So it's more technical, but what do we consider a makom? But first we want to go into the mahus, that's an understanding of the din of Kiddush Makom Suda. That'll come first. Beautiful, beautiful sugya.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi.
Good Shabbos.
Yeah, good Shabbos.